Okay. So, can everyone hear me? Someone like in the chat, and they just like throwing a thumbs up or something? This is obviously my first time doing this, so I just need there's a learning curve here. Loud and clear. Thank you, Terrence. Um, okay, so let me just get the camera going here. You can see I got my whole setup right here and got my anchor board. So, um, did anyone come to this chat with some questions or anything, or did you want me to talk about something? I have a few things that on my mind that I could talk about too at any point, but is there anything anyone wants to see right off the bat? While people are typing, I'll tell you. So I got all of my stuff pretty much ready to go. I'm wearing a harness right here, and I got a bunch of metal gear on it. So I'm like ready to go with anything. That anchor board from oh yeah, this is what they call a REMS board, and so it's made by Freestone Equipment, and yeah, it's made in conjunction with Dale Rimsberg, and that's why they called it the REMS board. It's pretty neat. It comes with these three bolts right here. You can slide them around anywhere. You also have these little slots right here that you can slot stoppers into to make like a trad anchor. All right, so what's my current crevasse rescue setup? So, are you talking about the system that I like to use, or are you talking about just like the gear I carry with me? Um, as far as like the gear, I usually pretty much always will have like a micro traction with me, about three lockers. What else? Double length sling and a hollow block. And well, that's actually just about the majority of what I. That's the main thing of what I will carry with me. I'll have a few non-lockers just to hold stuff together, and I'll carry one picket pretty much all the time. Sometimes two pickets. They each usually come with a non-locker and maybe a double length sling, but most of the time they're the wire type pickets. Up here, this is kind of my current favorite picket. This is the SMC Pro picket right here. It has a really good like top part right here that can take a lot of bashing, and it also has this like wire. Ugh, the wire is super malleable. You can see how this flops around anywhere. So I like it over like the MSR products or the Yates pickets. Um, and so I'll carry like at least one of these. Maybe I'll have two at least in the crew. And then ice screws mid season, I'll carry like two. And then late season, like September, I'll carry about four. So, but all that other gear, the double length sling, the hollow block, the three, at least three lockers, sometimes four, micro traction, those are definitely the most common things I do. Oh, the chariot belay. Um, hang on. To answer, I see Henry, he added in another one gear and system. So I said the gear. The system so if you do like a class with me, my current favorite system is the new strand direct haul. And basically the way how that one works is you rest the fall, and then you, while you're tied into one end, your partner's in the hole, you transfer their load onto the anchor, and then I actually take the end that's tied to me and drop it down to them, and then build a 3-to-1 with that end, and that actually avoids a lot of the pitfalls of the 3-to-1 direct haul, but allows you to um, still have a simplistic haul that you can actually haul a decent amount with. And so that's kind of what I like to teach. Go-to systems while I'm on the mountain, it kind of depends. Like if I actually had someone fall into a crevasse, usually I try to get away with the least amount of mechanical advantage. A lot of times I've been able to pull out people the same size as me with just a 2-to-1, And there are a couple different ways you can do that, but 2-to-1 is probably the go-to. And if I can't pull them out, or for whatever reason I have to add more mechanical advantage, I'll probably convert it into the 6-to-1. So a standard drop loop with a Z on top of it. And those systems are favored because most of the time they actually produce the least amount of force on your anchor while providing the most amount of mechanical advantage to the climber. So that's kind of a nice one to have in your back pocket. Let's see now, looking at the chat. So thoughts on the chariot belay? I don't think I have done a video on this. And truth be told, I'm like sort of thinking about the chariot belay. So from my understanding, this may be different from who posted that? Devin. It may be different from what Devin was asking, but sort of my thoughts on it are, let me just get tied in so that way I can actually use this anchor here. And if this isn't what you were thinking of, Devin, then let me know, because this may not be the actual chariot belay. But let's start off with, or actually, let's start off with the most simplistic version. So my understanding of the chariot belay is a standard belay would be something like this. I'm hooked into my anchor nice and tight right here. Whereas and I would just belay normal like this. The chariot belay is in some form adding in a ton of extra rope here. So that way I can be really far away from the anchor, like off camera here. And that allows for a number of things. But the main reason for it is if you belay your climber and they're going up above you, they have a quick draw clipped in. And then if you're belaying them and then they fall, you have more room to be pulled forward because you are so far away from the anchor. So that's the most simplistic form of a chariot belay. Devin, is that sort of what you had in mind, or were you thinking about something different? Yep. Okay, cool. So let me show you guys some variations on that now. This one is this one may actually be like the least likely to be used as a chariot belay. A clove hitch with a super long strand right here. And what I mean by that is, I guess if the terrain is really easy to get up to the anchor, then this is okay. But if my leader gets to the top and puts me on belay, it goes tight to the clove hitch right here. And I have to solo up essentially to this anchor and take out this clove hitch and have them pull up the slack for me to be fully on belay. And so this is probably, while it's the most simple, it can be the least secure. And if it's just like blocky fourth class terrain, maybe it's totally fine. But if I wanted to do something to add some security, I could go back to this, what I was setting up beforehand. So ATC and guide mode. And I know I'm completely alone here, but let's say, the belayer's on this side and they are belaying me up as I'm climbing. And then let's say maybe there's like a nice ledge, or even a not nice ledge I can stand on, 10 feet below this anchor. They can tell me, hold on, stop right there. And they can tie a knot in this brake strand. They're overhand on a bite, and then that locks off the device, right? So now I'm hanging out on my lower ledge. He can lower a strand from the brake strand down to me, and I can clip my ATC onto that strand. So they can pull up my ATC and clip it onto their harness, so that way they have a device to belay me up higher. And if they send the rope down to me from the brake strand and I stack it on my rope right here, just, like you normally would, and belay them off of this strand, then I can be totally secure on this ATC from my further perch. They climb up, lead their pitch. they pull on all the rope until it gets to here, or actually it would get down to me. I wouldn't let them pull this brake strand up, and I can tell them like, that's me. Or by the time they go off belay, I could just do it where as I climb up the route, I pull my brake strand, and that pulls the rope through the ATC. So I give myself a belay up to the anchor, and then I can just hang out here actually until the rope gets pulled tight. I'd say that's me. And all I have to do instead of taking out a clove hitch is take off the ATC, clean that whole thing up, and then I'm good to, well, clean all this, and then I'm good to climb. So there are probably other methods to use the chariot belay. I guess maybe if you wanted to get really crappy, you could argue that you could use a micro traction for it, but that is kind of the way I like doing it the most. It kind of keeps everything together. It keeps me on belay, and I can move on. And there may be times where I do that with clients, but the chariot belay in general is it's kind of like your third line of defense here, like we would default to something else before the chariot belay, and that could be something like a fixed point belay. I would probably use a fixed point belay before I use the chariot belay, depending on my terrain, because the fixed point belay allows for um, more action at the anchor and a bit more versatility, whereas the chariot belay, you kind of need to have a few things that work for you. Anyway, that's a little something about that. All right, what's the next thing? Do you plan on climbing any 8,000 meter peaks? Jeremiah. So, I mean, I would love to. Yeah, the idea of climbing an 8,000 meter peak sounds great to me, but the only issue is just money right now. I mean, I just moved down to Kings Beach here in California, so that kind of cleaned out the bank account. But maybe, I mean, in the future, it would be really cool to climb some 8,000 meter peaks. Everest is obviously the one everyone thinks about. That one also happens to be the most expensive. So maybe one of the Gazerbrums, or maybe I could weasel my way onto like an Alpenglow Choi Oyu trip. So if anyone from Alpenglow is watching, then shoot my name over to whoever is in charge of there. And I have barely any high altitude experience, so I think they'll want me a whole lot. But yeah, to answer your question in short, I would love to climb an 8,000 meter, but right now I just don't have the cash for it. Favorite product from Kong, Italy? My favorite Kong product. I guess that would be where is it? Here we go. So I don't have too many Kong items, but this is probably my favorite Kong product. This is called the Kong Gigi. And for those of you who don't know what a Gigi style device is it's essentially just an ATC like this in guide mode, and it only functions as a guide mode device or a belay from above device. And if you're more on the we like using these as guides a lot because we do parallel ropes where we belay two separate climbers at the same time through these devices. And just by nature of how they're built, this is an older style ATC, but the holes here are slightly bigger than the holes here. So that just allows for the least amount of friction while pulling rope through. And the reason why I like the Kong one most of all, if you can see it, it may be hard to see, but you can see this little rib of metal right here. There are other devices like this Ovo. This is made by Camp. You can see there's definitely no ridge. This one has a ridge. And that ridge actually plays a huge part in minimizing friction while you're belaying with two ropes or even one rope. So I think Kong has the best design for a GG style device. And yeah, the Ovo is not bad. It's a bit easier to get your hands on, but it's just this one's great. So that's kind of my favorite piece of Kong equipment. Let's see now. All right, so I'm trying to make sense of this. I thought the main advantage was reducing the factor of the fall. Is that in reference to the chariot belay? I'm gonna guess that's for the chariot belay, and it so the fall factor is still going to be what it is, regardless of whatever the climber falls at. The big point with the chariot belay is you have to keep that quick draw or do something to avoid a factor 2 fall. So yeah, if I'm belaying right here, my climber's not clipped in, they fall directly on me, and that's a factor 2 fall. Whereas if this is clipped in right here and they go 5 feet above the anchor and they fall 10 feet down, that's a factor 1 fall. And so the chariot belay is more about positioning your climber far enough away from the anchor so that the way they have room to move up as they get pulled with the force of the fall. And then hopefully they sort of dissipate the force of the fall before they hit this quick draw. Because if I'm really close to this quick draw and then I catch a fall, I can slide into this pretty fast. Whereas the chariot belay, it just gives me more room to move forward. So it could be something that's a bit more of a, light, heavy climber, light belayer tactic too. It may be a good way to keep everything in the same realm of what you're familiar with while you're doing that. So hopefully that answered that question. All right, Chris, happy Thanksgiving. Oh, happy Thanksgiving, Chris. Best thing to do when you get to the next belay and your belay anchor sucks. Bad gear, bad bolts, how to protect the belay. Wow, that's a question, right? So there are a lot of things you can do in that circumstance. Sometimes the guidebook or whatever beta you have on the route may warn you that it's a bad belay. And so that's kind of a nice thing to work with. If you know that ahead of time, you can sort of form a plan right off the bat. So yeah, if you get to like an anchor and it's like two button head bolts that spin and it's like you wouldn't trust them, and then you have a bomber crack to the left, that's kind of a no-brainer, right? Provided you have trad gear, you can build an anchor. One thing is those topos aren't set in stone. So I know it makes sense, you're reading like third pitch and it's like 100 feet, and then we get to this like ledge with an anchor. Well, you don't have to build the anchor there. And so sometimes if I get up, I mean, this is kind of hard to think about because this is a kind of a rare situation nowadays. But if I get up to like where an anchor is and I don't like the looks of it, an easy thing you can go with is just continue climbing, go another like 30 feet or whatever until you find maybe a crack system or something like that. And you can build an anchor off of that. If you're in like a sport multi-pitch context, and if you have like one bolt that you're okay with, and then another bolt that you're not okay with, but you still want 2 bolts, right? You can actually climb up higher. So let's see. In this example, I'm going to use this as one of my bolts right here. And so we can pretend these are a lot further away, but this bolt is like 5 feet above this anchor. Could I use something else? No, I'll keep using this as an anchor. So I can clip to this bolt. This is actually a shovel handle that's just wedged under all that stuff. But anyway, I clip to that bolt, and then I'm happy with that bolt. I trust it. I can say take, lower, and then I lower down to this anchor, and I have my good bolt, my bad bolt. I have one bolt. Who knows? You can even do this halfway up sport multi-pitch if you just lower down to the next bolt. So I could even be halfway up a pitch. And then when I get to that point, there's man, I may have to just sort of think of this on the spot, but I could take, there you go, let's get that out of there. So I could take like a locker. This rope is tight right here. If I can unweight, this is pretty easy. I may have to like tie a sling onto my belay loop so that way I can sit on the bolt right here. But if let's say that I'm at kind of a good stance, And I can pull a little bit of slack through. I'm still on belay down there. So I pull a little bit of slack. I can clip this rope in right here. And then you kind of just have to mess around with how this is going to work. But ideally, you would grab, can you see that? Yeah, you grab the middle and the 4 strands right here. This would probably be in a longer context, but I go right here, and I can tie all this into a large knot. It takes a little bit of rope. There we go. So there, you can sort of imagine this as being like 5 or 6 feet apart from each other right here, because this can be as long as you need it to be. In this case, it's just really short. But I'm secured to the backside of this knot. If I want to shorten it up, I could always just do the whole carabiner to the belay loop and then tie a clove hitch here. There we go. So that's shortened up, lock, lock, lock. And I can belay my buddy off of this. And this is a full-on anchor, and it could be a very dispersed anchor. So this upper bolt could be, 5 feet higher than this bolt, but it allows me to at least get a strong anchor in there. Obviously, you do get a little bit tied in with, I guess, in this circumstance, my partner would have to lead the next pitch. So this isn't quite ideal if you're the only one who's leading everything. But if you're in this situation already, it's already not ideal. So you kind of just have to roll with the punches by that point. Okay, where did that one go? Hopefully that helped give you some ideas there, Chris. All right, Casey. That's not Casey from Mount Lemon, was it? Some of the gear we bring with us on a climb is either very versatile, like a carabiner. Oh, thanks for your comment, Alex. Yeah, I agree with that. Oh, hang on. Here's more. And very specific gear, like a Jumar. In multi-pitch free climbing, what gear do you find to be the most versatile and efficient in its use? I mean, in a multi-pitch climb, probably the most versatile piece of equipment is a locking carabiner. I would argue that you can kind of do anything with it. Your rope is also... Maybe the rope is a little bit more versatile. Those are both your basic items that are super versatile. Another thing that can be useful is something like a quick draw, because it's like, it's a quick draw for one, and then you can just take stuff apart and you have those raw materials with you. So that's also a pretty versatile thing, as well as all your cams have carabiners on them. So you pretty much have an unlimited supply of non-locking carabiners for whatever you want. I find those to be very versatile. Double length slings and even a hollow block, depending on what it's tied out of. Double length sling is super versatile. Basically, actually, the more basic your equipment, the more you can do with it. And when I'm in rock climbing land, I do like to do something like I carry a bit more of specific items, like a connect adjust, for example, and that's for help on rappel down or doing this or that. That's the main item that's versatile, but all the basic stuff is super versatile, and you want to carry it all the time. Ad may run here. Is there an ad going on right now? Can anyone hear me? Google just prompted a little ad inserted right here. You can go past. She just got home from work. All right, cool. I guess when you watch this while it's recorded on YouTube, there may be an ad inserted right there. Again, it's my first time doing this, so there's a lot of learning curves. So yeah, to go back to that, ATCs, locking carabiners, quick draws, double length slings, third hands. All these things are very versatile because they're so simplistic. And you can pretty much get yourself out of any situation with those materials. The other one I guess I didn't think of was cord. It's also super versatile because if you want to leave that behind, that's the easiest thing to leave behind and replace in the future. So um, you don't see me with as much specific gear in the alpine because I focus more on versatility and moving fast. Whereas the other more specific types of climbing, like big wall climbing, that's when you have like the Jumars and the Grigris and all this other crazy stuff. Actually, I'd say Grigri is also an incredibly versatile tool that's gotten me out of several jams in the past. So those are really all the equipment. All of that equipment goes with me up the wall, along with whatever rack I use on any climb. And that's really the efficiency right there. Is those very versatile items. Do you ever struggle with the idea of climbing hard versus climbing for fun? Interesting. I go through phases in my life. There's definitely a time where I was much more of the sport climber kid, gym rat sort of deal. And I wanted to just like, train really hard and climb really hard stuff. For me, climbing for fun would be actually going out on like a chill multi-pitch route because I like the adventure of it. And if it's not hard climbing, it's still kind of a cool place to be and fun to sort of get a few 100 feet off the ground. That's just me personally. Some people, their idea of having a great day is just going out and cragging. So I don't know. I guess I flip flop back and forth. Right now, I'm not a super strong climber, so it's pretty easy for me not to think about climbing really hard routes. But in the future, I'll probably get really psyched on it. So I guess in my world, it's not as hard, as much of a struggle. I just sort of, you know, I just sort of want what I want for a year, and then I sort of change my opinion and flip flop back and forth. Is it worth having a micro tracks as part of a climbing everyday carry? Yes and no. I tend to. Oh, I guess when I'm in the alpine, it is pretty much on my harness all the time, and that was mostly working up in Washington when I was always on a glacier. Um, in rock climbing, I may not use it as much because a lot of times I can use my gree in place of a micro traction. And I pretty much always carry a gree with me while I'm in the rock world. And the nice part about the gree is it's more easily releasable than the micro track. And if I wanted to clip it onto the rope as some sort of like grip to the rope, I'd probably use my third hand for that. If I'm like helping hauling a climber over a harder part of a pitch or something like that. So some people really like carrying micro tractions as part of a everyday carry, but it's kind of in more of a emergency role. Like it's on the carabiner with their knife, some tat, and a micro traction, just in case of an emergency. But I personally don't carry it with me all the time. All right, let's see. Yeah. If the crux is right above the anchor and the anchor is clipped for the leader, and then the leader is 10 feet lower than they would be, I think that would reduce the fall. All good either way. Yeah, let me read that one more time. Uh, it could reduce the fall a little bit because you have more rope between the belayer and the climber. Yeah, because the least amount of rope you have out, the least amount of rope there is to stretch, and so the fall can be a bit harder when when the climber falls onto the belay, especially if you're not as the belayer in a position to give some sort of soft catch. If you have more rope out, then that helps reduce the force on the climber, and it also helps reduce force on the equipment. So sometimes if you lead a longer pitch, if you have like more fragile gear, and then you fall, it could actually reduce force on the gear because there's just more rope to stretch. So yeah, that is pretty correct. Oh, I saw the Mammut Norvond. Any opinion yet? Should be more durable steel insert. Yeah, thank you, and happy Thanksgiving to you too, Devin. Oh, second question from Devin. So let me grab the Norvond right now. This is my backpack that I sort of set up for ice climbing this winter, whether I do it or not. It just has like my standard ice climbing stuff in it. And I'm pretty sure I put the Norvond in there. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, this is the Mammut Norvond. And essentially it kind of takes after the old Petzl Reverso, like the very first one they did. Some different features are this right here is a steel plate, and then we also have a steel back right here, and the rest of this is aluminum. And so I do have opinions on this, and they're all good. This is actually this may be my new favorite belay device right here. But the big thing I like this over the Gigajoule, which I also happen to have right here. So this Gigajoule, they have steel right here as well, and steel right here. So those are the main wear points. Actually, if you rappel, this backside of the ATC is for sure the thing that gets the most wear. But the difference is the Gigajoule's teeth are super, it's kind of hard to see in the video. The Gigajoule, like this section right here, I found that I think the teeth just add a bit too much friction. And what I like to do with my belay devices in general is I rappel on them enough so that way I call it breaking in the device. You can see how the teeth are worn out. So now you get more of a normal channel. And then once I get my belay device like that, that's how I sort of keep it. And so that works with aluminum devices. But since these are steel, these teeth are going to wear out like 4 times, or take as like 4 times as long to wear out, if they even do. So you're kind of stuck with that. Whereas on the Norvond, the teeth are so small. There's still a little bit of teeth in there, but it's so small that this channel doesn't produce a lot of friction when I'm pulling rope through. So that's the big thing. I would say that this is probably my new favorite belay device, but it really does deserve its own video. And sorry, I haven't made a video about it yet. What to do? All right, going back up the list here. Okay, this is regarding the chariot. Oh, okay, yeah, it was regarding the chariot. Yeah, okay. Hopefully, I answered your question there, Guadalajara Ara, Guadalajara. All right. Have you had any personal climbing objectives in the Sierra yet? I mean, like all of them. Pretty much what gets me psyched is just doing something I haven't done before. I don't mind if it's a long, easy climb. I don't mind if it's a short, hard climb. I guess right now I'm only really focused on skiing stuff since skiing season started up, but I would say maybe Mount Whitney is obviously on the list. The standard route, and I would like to ski the Mountaineers route this year. So those ones, East Face, sorry, and East Buttress. Fish Hook Arret on, what's that one called? Fish Hook Arret on, oh, I'm blanking on the name of the peak, but that one seems really interesting. I would like to get out to Yosemite and climb another big wall. I haven't done that in a long time, so it'd be great to do something out there. I'm thinking maybe a route on Leaning Tower, because that's about a 3-day wall, and I would like to solo another wall. So I'm going to try to solo a wall on Leaning Tower maybe next fall. And then maybe like an actual El Cap route. That'd be nice to do. So let's see now. And then like just other, stuff. The Tuolumne Triple looks really fun. That's moving over a lot of rock. But yeah, just about if someone calls me up and asks me if I want to do something, I'm pretty much going to say yes, just because there's so much to climb. So I need to just get out there and do it. Um, all right, so let's see now. Preferred small slash micro cams. All right, cool. I can pull some out here. Okay, so here I got some of my small cams, a little selection right here. Um, let's see now, current favorite small cams. The Alien, there's actually a little leaf stuck in this trigger. So the Alien cams. Sorry about that sound. I don't know if anyone can hear it. I don't know what's making that, but it'll turn off soon. So I'll just talk a bit louder. But Alien cams are great micro cams. They have really good action. They have good sizes that fit into small things. The head width is pretty nice. The only issue is the metal is a bit softer, so these wear out a little bit faster. Other options. Oh, here we go. Black Diamond X4s. Wow, okay, that could use some lube. But Black Diamond X4s, these are older. You know, they have the Z4s now, which are just about as good. And but you'll see me out there with like the 0.3, 0.2, 0.1 X4 quite a bit. They have a longer head width, but they also fit into a lot of good stuff. So a lot of times I'll carry this and Alien cams as doubles. I also have a single rack right here of totem cams. So the blue and the black, really good for small things. And because of kind of the shape of the lobes, they'll fit into different cracks than the other cams, and you can have them a little bit more widen out like so, versus the other cams you want to keep them tighter because of the lobe shape. So these can fit in some wacky things. This one I just wanted to show you guys. This I bought at I think a Play It Again Sports. I think it's an old Totem Basic, but I just don't know really for sure. It could also be an old Alien cam. But yeah, I bought it at Play Again Sports for like $15, and it didn't have a sling, so I made my own sling for it. It's kind of janky. It maybe isn't the most professional thing, but it has a really good action. I kind of like it. It's just a fun cam. So yeah, that's probably all my micro cams. I do have an old set of C4s, or sorry, C3s laying around, which are fun to pull out when I want them, but I don't really use them as much anymore. They kind of just sit there. Um, Zach's questions, thoughts on totems. What's your favorite size? I like totems. I think they're nice. I only have a single rack. You know, maybe I'll expand to like the purple and lower sizes because they are pretty nice. Some thoughts here. Let me grab a larger one. So here's the biggest totem that they make. It's about the same as a black diamond yellow or number two. And yeah, like I described with that blue one, is I found that these can be pretty solid in wider placements. So if I grab like a normal cam, here we go. So if I'm placing like a standard BD cam, I place it somewhere like right where the most ideal spot is, like right where the lobes intersect. I love seeing that in a crack. That always gives me the warm fuzzies. If I'm a little bit more open, you know, this is totally fine. Uh, Getting wider like this, then I'm starting to get worried. And at this point, you can probably get a number 3 in there. If I go a bit tighter like that, then I'm also fine with that. And I obviously don't want to overcam. So my real range is about here to there, to there with these ones. What I found with like the totems is just with their lobes being a little more oblong, I can place them like that's fully closed in. So I can place them here with the ends intersecting, and then all the way out to here about, if the rock is like right there on the lobes. So this is kind of like a number 2.5 at its max, or at its ideal placement. Whereas you can see how it's a bit wider. It may be really hard to see in the camera, but at its still in an ideal placement, it's like a 2.5. And then if you flare out a bit more, then it gets sketchy really fast. But that's kind of a neat thing about the totems. And that's why it's kind of fun to carry a set of totems with you. But I find maybe just having the smaller totems like if you're working on buying your rack because they're really expensive, I would start with probably the point 0.5 or the purple totem and go down from there. Maybe the green totem. I really like the green totem a lot, but you can hold off on the red and the orange totem if you can't just buy them all outright. But yeah, that's a really great part about the totems. Tips for simul-climbing. Best ways for follower to manage slack. When would the leader use a microtrack? So the biggest thing with the whole simul-climbing thing is kind of understand the terrain that you're on. I think the biggest deal I see with people and simul-climbing is they have like a full 60-meter rope between the two of them, but they're on blocky terrain. So like a big thing that gets simul-climbed in Washington is like prime rib. And I think you can simul-climb effectively on that route, but not with a full 60-meter rope because you just knock rocks off, it gets caught. It's just not the terrain for it. Whereas you see the speed climbers like Alex Honnold and Tommy Caldwell on the nose, and then they have a full 60-meter rope between them because it's vertical terrain. And so they still have the rope get caught on a few things, but in that vertical terrain, it's just a lot easier to have that amount of rope between climbers. So your first step is kind of deciding how much rope you want between people. And this can be done a couple of different ways. If I was simul-climbing up an easy route, like a dome in Tuolumne or something, and nearly all those domes end with a walk-off, then I would probably bring like a 40-meter rope. And maybe if I wanted to, I could bring a beal escaper just in case of emergencies. But I would bring like a 40-meter because that's less rope that you have to deal with between you and your partner, and you're closer together, so it's more effective and everything is pretty good. If I needed a 60-meter rope for rappelling off, then I would stack at least half of that rope in my pack and be clipped to the middle. Or you could always like kiwi coil it around yourself. Just do something to shorten that rope, because if you need really specific terrain to make a 60-meter work effectively and not just cause more of a headache. So kind of staying closer in simul-climbing is something that I like to do than a full rope length out. So that's a great way to kind of keep things good. And it also is it's less rope between you two, so it's less slack to manage. A big thing with that would be if you know someone in your crew who's a faster climber, who's a slower climber, then you could always put the faster climber above them, right? And then the slower climber is below. And that in itself kind of keeps the rope traveling at that same rate. Whereas if you flip it around, then the faster climber is probably going to be riding the slower climber's heel a bit more, and they have to do more messing with the rope. So it's tough to like be stuck there on the crux and wait for the rope to go higher for the lower person. I understand that. But you can time some stuff out like that. And then also while you're simul-climbing, don't be afraid to stop at some point. Like when me and my buddy climbed Infinite Bliss, we simuled up the first like 7 or 8 pitches. But when I ran out of gear, I just stopped and belayed them up. And if you get to a tricky section, maybe stop and give them a belay past that part. Now, of course, that phases into the microtraction question, whereas like how to use the microtrack or when to use the microtraction. And that is solely judgment. Ideally, it would be after the leader gets past a hard section and they want a little extra protection for the follower. That's when you add the microtraction on. And then after that, it's all just judgment based from there. Mm-hmm. How long have you been climbing, and what drew you to it? Oh, that's a question, Henry. So you got to ask. I guess if we go off of what Mom says, I probably started climbing when I was about 6, and that was like, I played soccer for a little bit, but I kind of didn't want to do that anymore. And my mom was really specific. She wanted me to do at least something physical, which is really great for child development, which I assume is why she did it. And so I've been to the climbing gym a few times just on like a birthday party or something like that beforehand. And I thought, well, I could do climbing. And mom kind of like, okay, whatever, we'll do climbing. So I was like 7 or whatever when I started climbing regularly, maybe 8. And I kind of kept on doing that. When I was 14, I got my first job at the gym, working as a belay slave. And then I worked at that gym through college, continued going through working and teaching classes and stuff. So I don't really know what drew me to it. It just sort of happened. And overall, I've been climbing now for like, I mean, I guess if I started when I was 6, anywhere from 19 to 21 years now. Let's just go with that. Yeah, it's kind of tough to know officially when it all started. What famous climbers do I look up to? Oh. Okay. I know what to say, don't I? I think Ed Viesters is pretty cool. Climbing all the 8,000ers without oxygen is really awesome. Tommy Caldwell is really cool. As far as a rock climber goes, I really respect what he's done with his free climbing and those giant routes he's done. Other professional climbers that I look up to, huh? Oh, I'm blanking. Mike Lebecki. Mike Lebecki, he's super cool. If you guys don't know him, check him out. He has done like, what am I saying? Everyone probably knows him, but I think he's basically done 2 expeditions, like 3 or 4 expeditions a year for like the last 10 years or something like that. And so, yeah, definitely like he's really cool. Same thing with Conrad Anchor, Jimmy Chin, Renan Ozturk. I've really been respecting what he's been doing with like shooting Everest in like HD. That's really cool. So I don't know. I don't know if look up to is the right word, but I think these guys are all really awesome. And if they wanted to like hang out with me at any point or need a partner, then just hit me up. Another guy that I thought was really cool that's more on the guiding side is Mark Smiley. I think his videos have helped inspired me, and one day maybe I'll do my own project like the Becky project. I keep on talking about it, like inspired from Mark and Janelle doing their 50. So, yeah, I don't know. Those are some folks that are pretty cool. Where was I? All right. How do you motivate clients when they're exhausted? Yeah, this one can be tough. I mean, like, there's the usual tricks. Like, camp is right up there. When you can actually see camp, that's great. Oh, it's right up there. And sometimes it always looks closer than it is when it's far away. So that one's really great. I do like. There are times now when I'm like trudging on a glacier or something like that, and I'm like, it's probably time for a break. And when I'm thinking that, that's usually the client's thinking it too. And so I either keep going until I hit, a good spot to hang out at, and then, and then we either break, or a lot of times the client will be like, "Can we take a break?" And then I'll just be like, "Oh, just a little bit further." And so that's kind of like short-term motivation. In the end, if the client really isn't motivated to do whatever they want you to do, then you're not getting up it. So that's the tough part is most of the time when people pay you to do something, they really want to get up there and get at it. So it's they kind of tend to motivate themselves a bit, but also being really honest with what they're doing. If they want you to climb something a bit more intense for their level, just be right about that. I actually just recently had a client that was over motivated, and they wanted to do a whole bunch of stuff, but we had very little time. And since they were like a pretty strong climber, they wanted to climb like a hard route, but it turned out it was too committing, and it just didn't fit our structure, and it didn't fit their goals, their learning goals. And so I pretty much put a halt to it. We even hiked up pretty close to the base, and I'm just looking at it. I've never done this route before. And I was like, this just isn't going to work. We got to be back at camp at like 2 p.m. and it's like 9:30, but we just don't have the time to actually go on this route. And if you want to like learn some skills and lead, this is way too much. So sometimes the overly motivated people are more challenging than the motivated folks. So that's something you gotta worry about. But like the self doubt will also come in, and sometimes just going one foot at in front of the other and helping them divide up their objective into smaller pieces really helps. So it's a bit of an art and it's a bit of reading people, but overall it just takes time and some experience on how to really get the clients to move. Let's see now. Oh, look at this. Okay, so I should have read this out loud, but it's Trevor's comment. He says he's mostly a sport climber and practicing rope work setups. If there's 5 systems, I should make sure I have 100% in rope systems, huh? Let's see now. 1, tying your figure 8 knot clean and well dressed. 2, rope systems. Belaying, top rope lead, making sure that you can belay effectively and safely, and that you can read your climber well while they're moving, and that takes time. That's a hard skill to gain, surprisingly. Third one is being able to just make at least one anchor. If you're sport climbing outside, then just knowing how to build like a quad anchor or the standard pre-equalized anchor is totally fine, and you only really need to know one in order to be good out there. So that's technically a rope system. I'm going to have trouble thinking of 5 things, but I guess another fourth one would be just getting good at clipping quick draws, because sometimes people like they move their hand all around, and being fast and fluent at getting the rope through the gate of the quick draw is really going to help you out when you're cruxing out. So like even though you've practiced enough to the point where you're actually climbing routes, it may be worth it just to practice a little bit more, so that way you can just like bam and clip that rope into the quick draw. One thing you can do is you probably already watched Adam Andra videos, but go back and watch those videos and look at how fast he clips that rope. That was one thing I really noticed when I first started watching him, is he just fires that thing into the quick draw. So take a look if you didn't notice that before and see how fast he does it, and that'll help you be a lot more of a secure climber, and also help you push the grade a bit more. So I know that's not 5 things, but that's 4 things all based around sport climbing, where if you like master those and get really good, then you're winning. Down through practice, what would you recommend? Oh, okay, yeah, I can. The other part of that. What do you think about washing ropes in a washing machine? I'm going to defer to the manufacturers on this. A number of manufacturers have made videos about it, but I think the big thing is really get like a front loading washing machine and not one of those top loaders with that, that middle spindle thing in there. Because I think if you get that in there, regardless of what you do with your rope, you're going to like tangle the whole rope up and possibly like break the machine because it won't be able to spin. So, yeah, when you're washing ropes, take the time to daisy chain your ropes together so that way they don't tangle up. Does anyone want me to show them a daisy chain? Here, I can do this real fast. So you can start with both ends of the rope together to make this faster, but essentially, or you start from the middle. You take the rope and you make a loop, then you take this, pass it through. So it's a slip knot, and then instead of pulling anything, you grab this, pass it through, grab this, pass it through. It's like crocheting, the easiest form of crocheting ever. So you do that to your whole rope. The way you finish it off is you take the end and just pass it through and then pull it tight. And if you especially start with like the middle of your rope or both ends together and just do that same thing with 2 ends, and that helps keep your rope organized, so that way it's not in a big mess after you throw it in the washing machine. Use either no soap, just to like, because like bleach or Clorox or something, something bad may happen to your rope if you use that stuff. So either wash it with only water and cold water, Or you could buy some of that rope cleaner. I think Beal makes it, where it's just like, it's basically soap, but it is totally safe to use with nylon products. So that's pretty much everything I know about washing ropes. Thoughts on using half ropes, like on a wandering route or potential rock fall? Yeah, so that is true. If you have potential rock fall and rocks fall and hit your rope, you can be hosed. But if you have two ropes, then you're less hosed. And so if I was worried about a rock falling and hitting my rope, I would probably use two thin triple rated ropes. So, one that's rated as a single, half, and twin, because what you can do is use them in any situation. But if a rock does fall and hit one of your ropes, you have a fully rated single rope. And you can buy like the Sterling Nano 9 or the Beal Opera. I have an Opera right here. This thing is like super thin. It's 8.5 and it's triple rated. So if you get like two of those ropes, if you are really worried about rockfall coming in and hosing your ropes, then you can use something like that. I do use, actually, I just retired my twin and half ropes, so I don't have any right now in this. I'm going to replace them at some point, I guess. But a lot of times when I use two ropes, I used to use Sterling Photons. That's what they were called, 7.8. They were rated as twin and half, but not singles. And I would use them as more of twin ropes just for ease of life, because it is kind of sucky for the belayer to belay on half ropes, like one at a time and all that stuff over a long pitch. So if I tend to try to just clip them into the same pieces a whole lot. The only thing with it is half ropes being thin, they stretch a whole lot. And if they stretch a whole lot, they're easier on the equipment that you stick into the rock. So that's why you get people in Britain on their like small little trad climbs using half ropes, because if they fall, they can be softer on the protection. So that's why you see them using those a whole lot versus the reasons in America we tend to use them for really long routes or really long rappels. So I pretty much pull out half ropes when I know I have to use them for rappelling. If I'm in something like the desert, then I tend to do a single rope and a tag line for rappelling and hauling packs. But yeah, that's what I use half ropes for. And there have been a few times in the alpine where I pull out a half rope just to save weight, and I'm just climbing with my buddy. So I will just use a half rope then. I guess it's also not uncommon for me to use a half rope on a glacier. I actually have a glacier half rope somewhere in here that's it's made specifically for glacier travel. It's 40 meters and it's a half rated rope. So I use them on glaciers when I'm just doing something like the Coleman Deming non-technical mountaineering routes. Can I explain the Beal escaper? Yes, I can. Let's see now. Where did I put my Beal escaper? I think it's in. Found it. So I actually have a separate video all about this, but just for the sake of the whole show, let's see if this isn't super tangled up. All right, so different names. I call this the rope. This I call the finger trap right here. And then this is the bungee, just so you know. And then I guess this is like the loop. So I'll pass my escaper through, my anchor. That could be 2 bolts, could be chains, could be who knows what. And then you simply just follow these arrows. Maybe it's hard for you guys to see. See those arrows right there? So I pass this through. And I go down through down through the finger trap. They're making sure you don't miss one, because that's the whole reason for it. You definitely get a lot of them. There we go. Just try to pass that through real fast. All right, and you'll see this little black line that you can sort of see. Yeah, there you go. So you want to make sure that that black line is a little bit past the whole finger trap. And then the loop right here is for tying the rope. Sorry, that's kind of hard to see. Maybe I can move this closer. There we go. That's better. So the loop right there is where you tie your rope to. Now, Beal recommends doing an overhand like that, passing it through the loop. And then you rethread the overhand so you effectively make like a overhand on a bite. And the reason for that knot is just so that way it has the least likely chance of getting hung up on anything. But, you know, if you're not comfortable doing that knot, just tie a figure eight. And so the way how this works is when you weight it, the finger trap, oh, my anchor's failing. So when I weight it, the bungees are extended and the finger trap actually holds the whole system in place. And then when you unweight it, the bungee will retract and that causes this sort of pulling feature. So that way this thing slowly comes undone. It's kind of hard for me to demonstrate this without a real anchor. But at the bottom, you fully unweight it and you tug the rope and then you fully unweight it again. That's the key, is you have to fully unweight it. And then over time, it slowly will slip out. And then you fall, and then you get your whole rope back. So it's essentially a way to rappel with a full 60-meter rope without carrying another rope. It's definitely more of an emergency tool. You don't want to rely on that to get down a route because it takes forever to pull these things. And if you're into ski mountaineering, they work really well with those high, those high strength thin lines like this Petzl pole. This is like 15 kilonewtons and it's 6 mil. So this static hyperstatic, that's what it's called. This hyperstatic material pulls the beal escaper a whole lot easier than any sort of dynamic rope, regardless of how fat it is and everything. Parents still own a gear store. I know what you're referencing there. Those weren't my parents. That was just like a different store that I worked at for a little bit. So they didn't own a gear store, and they definitely don't now. If guiding 2 beginners multi-pitch, 3 people on the rope with you on an end. Oh, okay. I see what we're going here. 2 beginners multi-pitch, 3 people on the rope. Yeah, okay. So I do that a lot. In guiding, we do where, like, I'm the guide, I lead up and I belay one person up and then I belay the other person up. So they climb one at a time. And then the other option is I climb up with both ropes and both my clients can climb at the same time, which is parallel rope. And so when I'm in the alpine, when I'm in the rock world, I almost always have 2 separate ropes and 2 clients. So 1 rope per client. And then that is essentially like I'm tied into one, that rope goes to client 1, they're tied into the second rope, which goes to client 2. So the middle client is dragging up the rope for the final client. And so in the alpine, we'll often bring 1 rope and do that exact same setup with tying the middle client into the middle of the rope. So we keep that same caterpillar action only over a smaller pitch that's no more than half a rope length, and we tie that client into the middle. As far as whatever knot you want to tie them in with, go ahead and do a butterfly if you want. I usually went with the rewoven BHK, which is kind of like my new favorite knot. You could do a bowline on a bite. You could do a figure 8 clipped in with 2 lockers. You could do anything to clip them into the middle of the rope. So an alpine butterfly is totally fine. I don't really like using them all that much. That's why I don't really use them. Devin again. Would you suggest AMGA guide courses for people that don't want to be guides, just want to progress in the skill beyond? That's tough because that's a lot of money and it's a lot of very specific skills. So if you do want to take an AMGA course just to take your friends out, that's quite a bit of commitment to applaud you on that one for going that far. You're a bit, maybe a bit of a better option with less of a time consumption and less money consumption is just hiring someone who's certified and going out with them, and then they can just teach you specific skills you would use for taking your friends out. And that would be like 1 or 2 days or however long you want to make it, rather than taking a 10-day course and going through all the hoops like that. That's usually what I recommend for people that want to take these classes just for the skills, because it is kind of tough. I guess if you wanted to take something like an alpine skills course just for the skills, that could be useful. And even a rock guide course just for the skills could be useful. But the issue is these courses are starting to become bottlenecked, and you have an awful lot of people that want to get into these courses that AMGA just doesn't have room for. And all those people are like professional guides. So it's kind of tough to like go in as a, I'm just like recreationalist into these courses. You're kind of taking that away from someone who wants to make it a profession. So yeah, the nicer thing to do and a bit more of a focused point would probably be just hiring a certified guide to help you out with that stuff. All right, Charles, how long does it take to get an AMGA rock guide cert? Let's see now. It probably at least would take about a year and a half. And that would be like rock guide course in the fall, advanced in the spring, and then exam in the fall or something like that. Most people will just take the rock guide course and probably sit on that for a while until they finally go through the rest of the process. A more common way would be like, 1 year rock course, the next year advanced rock course, and the year after that rock exam. And so, and that depends on a lot of things. Money is a big thing. If that's not an issue, then the next thing is time to get the requirements and the necessary experience to go through all that stuff. Most people, again, will take like a rock guide course and then sit on that for a while. Even in the professional world, they'll have a rock guide course for a while, and then maybe like 7 years down the road, they go through the other two. But yeah, some people with a ton of climbing experience have just rocketed through the whole program. That's the nice part of the rock track versus alpine and ski is you can go through it fairly fast. Overlooked moderate multi-pitch routes in Red Rock Canyon. What would you recommend? People have asked me this in the past, and usually I go on Mountain Project to remind myself about routes. Overlooked too. Oof. Moderate, overlooked. I'm not sure what your definition of moderate is, but Sundog on Solar Slab is pretty fun. Black Orpheus, I don't think that counts as a moderate. I think that may be a bit too hard, but that one seems to be overlooked by a lot of people. This is a tough one. Lotta Balls Wall actually has a number of moderates that may not be as busy as other things. Angel Food Wall is, I think that's not quite overlooked, but that has like 3 great moderates on it. Trying to remember their names, but like Tunnel Vision is the one everyone does. So what you do is go past Tunnel Vision and climb. What are they called? Well, I'm totally blanking on the names. I feel like I need to look this up real fast. Angel Food Wall, Red Rock. Okay, give me a second. I got this. Sandy Hole. Yeah, climb Sandy Hole. I didn't even know that was a route. Tunnel Vision. Group Therapy. That's it. And Pure Blind Pillar. All right. I don't know if like. Yeah, that's it. They're both in the bottom. Thank you, Guadalajara Ara. Group Therapy and Pure Blind Pillar are not as popular as Tunnel Vision, but they're both great climbs and they're both moderate. One's 5.7, the other's 5.8. So those are some good ones. And then Big Bad Wolf is actually pretty fun, but I think a ton of people climb that now. So yeah, like those are some good ones you can check out. You can always ask some locals. They probably have a bit more beta than me. Do you have a college degree? If yes, what did you study? So I do have a college degree, and I studied classical music performance. So yeah, has nothing to do with what I do now. I played music for about as a little bit less long, but as long as I've been climbing. So both of those paths were like a thing for me. And there was a time in my life where I wanted to be a professional musician. So I studied music performance and I have a degree in that. And while I was in college, I kind of realized that the musician life did not appeal to me and guiding appealed a bit more. So I kind of just started doing that while I was in college. Actually, I kind of double time for a bit. What are your opinions on some climbing etiquette discussions? Yeah, it's discussions. Adding balls to sketchy sections, modifying FA intentions, climbing on choss, trundling, etc. So no one's gonna yell at you for ethics if you trundle off choss while you're climbing it. The only thing people are gonna yell at you about is if you trundle that onto someone. So I don't know if that's much of an ethic thing. It does depend. I mean, if it's your FA, all these FAs involve ripping crap off of the mountain and throwing it down. So that's just part of it and cleaning the rock and stuff. As far as adding bolts, I mean, like, I've never really cared too much about these ethic things, but yeah, add the bolts. You know, if it's like a 5-6 route that a 5'11 climber bolted, and they bolted it the way a 5'11 climber would do it rather than a 5'6 climber would do it, then that route is now completely off limits for any 5'6 climber, you know, unless they have a really good lead head right off the bat. So if you want your route to be more accessible to the masses, then bolt it like you would as a 5'6 climber. Now, as far as like me going out there with a bolt and starting to place stuff, I'm not really going to take that initiative unless I'm there with the, you know, the person developing the crag. But the nice part is a lot of people developing crags nowadays develop them with that in mind. So they kind of help out with the paradigm is changing from people that, you know, at first they were like, the point was not to place any protection because it should be scary. And now it's moving to plenty of crags are going out there that are specifically designated for new climbers. So that's a nice part about it. But that's probably all I should say about that one. When would you choose to simul climb? Whenever I wanted to. Yeah. It's not like a I guess specific decision. Me personally, when I go out to simul climb or when I go out to climb with a buddy, I'm just like, oh hey, you want to simul this? And then we get to climb up a big route, you know, just the two of us, and we don't have to stop or anything. So it's kind of like, yeah, that sort of deal. Now I wouldn't choose to simul climb something at my limit for sure. So I would it would be more of like a vertical hike that we're doing, like easy 5'7 climbing, 5'8, whatever, and we're just like going to the top. I don't really ever simul climb with clients, but yeah, that's just when I feel like, you know, I want to just climb with my friend, and we just want to climb from point A to point B without stopping. Would you oppose a world in which a majority of multi-pitch routes are sport instead of trad? Bolting over traditionally trad routes would it produce a safer, more popular world of climbing? I think it would definitely be more popular, but I think with the amount of people flocking to that newly bolted sport route, it would make things less safe. There's the trade-off there, right? Because a lot of times people can't having a bunch of people on a route is what makes it unsafe. And so I really personally I love long multi-pitch sport routes. You know, like Squaw Struck in Utah. It's like 20 pitches and it's 5'11. It's fully bolted. Or that climb down it. All of Potrero Chico is multi-pitch sport, and I think it's really fun because you don't really need any gear, so you can just like be out there and climb, and it's great. And that's also great for simuling. But I don't know if it's worth bolting every climb that you can do on trad gear. I mean, gear is gear. I really like the idea of if you can protect it with trad gear, then go ahead and protect it with trad gear. But if you get to a section that isn't protectable with the obvious trad gear, placing a bolt. So it's kind of like Squamish does this a whole lot, where if it's a crack climb, they don't bolt it. But the minute you get to like a 20-foot slab, they put a couple bolts there. So, you know, essentially you have protection all the way up the route. So that's kind of what I like. I don't really like doing big runouts. I used to really be into that, but um, that's kind of my opinion on it. Is like just let the route developers do what they want. If they want to bolt a or if they want to bolt a crack climb, I guess they could. You know, you could always just climb past it without clipping the bolts if you really wanted to. And then keep in mind for trundling, just make sure there's no one underneath you, and make sure your rope is out of the trundle zone. Just for the add on there. When would you choose to simul climb? Isn't that the same question? Weird. Oh, okay, no, I just lost my place. Do you do much bouldering? Uh, no, not really. I've done a lot more of it in the past. A lot being relative, not really that much, really. Now that I live here in Kings Beach, there's a ton of bouldering along Lake Tahoe. So the plan is me and Jamie are going to buy a couple crash pads, probably for next spring or next summer, and then start bouldering more outside. In the gym, I boulder a lot more for strength stuff, but yeah, I'm going to try to do more bouldering. Let's see. I live in New York City. This is all such a fantasy for me. Oh, well, I'm happy to hear that you're psyched, Mr. M. Um, Sorry that you live in New York, unless you really like it. Um, we need to downgrade Alphane. What's that? Is that a route? Is it pronounced that way? Alphane? We need you to downgrade Alphane. Okay, well, I'll give it a shot, I guess. I'll downgrade anything. I'll write a little report and put it on Climbing Magazine. Do you offer mentoring for someone looking to get into guiding? I do, Mr. Jeremiah, or Jeremias, or yeah. Yeah, I'll definitely mentor anyone who wants to get into guiding. I love doing that stuff. Preparing for SPI exams, rock guide courses, alpine courses. I'll mentor anything that anyone wants me to. So it's, yeah, for sure. Caleb, what are you doing here, Caleb? Yes, you can book me for the Hulk. We'll go. What do you want to climb? You want to do that like 12D route? Um, you can try that. I'll stick clip my way up that, Mr. Mallory. Oh, here we go. Guadalajara again. Do you see other guides or yourself using walkie-talkies? Yeah, I've only seen them with non-guided teams. Yeah, that's because all of our guides are really stubborn, and even though walkie-talkies come in handy quite a bit, we still don't want to use them. Um, but actually, that being said, I have run into a few folks that use walkie-talkies. They're really great on crowded routes and really great when you're working with people that haven't climbed a whole lot. So what I'm planning to do is Amazon sells these walkie-talkies that are like the size of an InReach Mini. So at some point, I will buy them and I will give them to my clients in, at a busy crag when we're doing like a multi-pitch. So that way I can say off belay, on belay, whatever. I think they are pretty nice. I don't really like carrying the rocky talkies around just because they're so big and bulky, you know. So I want something small that doesn't need to be super powerful. And then obviously when we're ski guiding, we use a lot more walkie talkies then. So I haven't done it yet, but I am planning to buy a set of BCA radios with the extension intercom link thing, because best practice when you're in the, when you have beacons on your body is to put the radio in your backpack and run the little speaker thing up. So I'm going to buy a fleet of at least, I actually will probably need to buy 5 of them because it's common to work with a 4-to-1 ratio in ski guiding. And then that way I can pass 1 to each client and 1 to myself. And that the point of that is to have the best practice of putting that walkie-talkie in your backpack. Because like I carry my beacon down here a lot of the times, but for folks that use the chest harness, having a walkie-talkie right here with the chest harness, that's going to cause some interference. Alphane, you pronounced it correctly. It's a V17 Boulder problem by Sean. No, I'm not going to downgrade that. I mean, like if I can climb it, or no, if I can fake my climb of it and have no one doubt me and everyone just accepts the fact that I've climbed this boulder, then I'll downgrade it. And I'd say, it's more like a stiff V9, and then I'll do it. but if I got to make sure that no one calls me out on it. Alpha's a little hard. Yeah, but us online Gumbies think it's a soft 17. Yeah, so it's a stiff 16. Okay, I guess that works out. Rocky Talkie is making a new, slightly heavier one that's 5 watts. I've seen this. Yeah, yeah, definitely. It has a wider range. So actually, in my old service, I worked with Northwest Alpine Guides. They used Rocky Talkies a lot, and the issue was when you would get usually on the Coleman Deming side a bit more. The south side of the mountain, the east end, had line of sight all the way to the summit, so you could use Rocky Talkies on that side. But the north side of the mountain had a bunch of hills, so we would go in and out of radio communication with each other, so that's where the 5 watt radios would be really great, is just having that wider range in that circumstance. So, yeah, if you want a bigger range of radios, then that's like a perfect thing for you. All right. Follow up on multi-pitch sport question. What's your sense of how much incremental damage or danger is there introduced by moving from sport to trad? I'm simply afraid of an inevitable incident due to gear failure. Uh, well, the first thing that comes to mind is you can have gear failure in sport and in trad, but maybe that's just ruining your whole life when I say that. Yeah, uh, I guess in the end, trad climbing is a bit more dangerous than sport climbing. Um, but if you have like a scary trad route that's like X rated, you add a few bolts and all of a sudden it's just like fine, then yeah, that's going to make it way better. But sometimes, man, I'm like kind of puzzled by this one. Um, yes, I guess you are introducing a little bit more aspect of danger if you bolt a trad line. But there are other things too, like bolts, go bad over time, or how the bolts are placed, or who placed the bolts. These could all affect the safety of the bolts. And sometimes those bolts actually give you a myth of safety in there because of that shoddy craftsmanship. So it's no matter what, rock climbing is dangerous, and in the end, it's all kind of like you could when it's just tough. Some people really like being able to place gear in the rock whenever they want, and they feel like that makes them feel safer, and they like it a lot more. But the other folks, they're just like more into the bolts. That's a really tough question overall, and I can see it both ways. Sometimes trad climbing safer, sometimes sport climbing safer. It just depends on so many circumstances. So sorry, that's not really an answer, but that's where I'm going to leave that one. Um, oh yeah, yeah, good recommendation there, Guadalajara. So they said I'm no pro or anything, but mock aiding I think is a great way to practice gear placement and build confidence. Yeah, I would say so, especially doing it on a top rope. Um, it is a bit different, obviously, falling on a piece of gear versus like just putting your body weight on it. But if you do get more of that mental comfort of sitting on trad gear and watching it go into the rock and spread and do all its things, then that can help your mental game quite a bit. Um, so yeah, it's not a bad suggestion. Are microcrams much good? Like smaller than the black totem? Whoa. The effective expansion range on them is so small they don't inspire much confidence for me. Yeah. So the smaller the cam, the less room it has to expand into the crack. That is totally true. Cams don't really get much smaller than the black totem. The big thing with them, let's see here. So here we go. Larger cam, smaller cam. So these larger cams, you can have these in less ideal placements because they have more room for movement. And even more than that, these double axle cams have just a bit more stability. So I've actually fallen on cams. That's hard to see in the video. You see how the back lobes are more closed than the front lobes right there? So I've actually fallen on cams that are uneven like this before, and they've caught me because of the stability and the expansion. These bigger cams, believe it or not, cams will actually expand cracks when you put weight onto them. It's kind of amazing the power of these little things. But if I put that downward force and they expand outwards a little bit, they have more room for that outward expansion. Whereas smaller cams, they don't nearly have that much room for outward expansion before it becomes a very unideal, under cam placement. So the way how we deal with that is these cams are actually kind of, you would say, more advanced um, pieces of gadgetry here. But really, when I place them, and I kind of do this with bigger cams, but I will bring them all the way down, slot them into my crack, and then let them expand out a little bit. So what that does is it's not an overcam because there's still some expansion in the lobes, but you have to get these things like close together. Like this is an ideal placement for this 0.3. Whereas for the number 2, this was the ideal placement. You see that difference right there? So the smaller the cams, the more specific and very in line they have to be in order to work. All these lobes have to be even. The lobes have to be closed in quite a bit. So that way, if there is a bit of an expansion, you have a little bit of wiggle room. So I tend to slot any cam really, 0.75, I'd say, and down. I will actually slot them into a constriction. So that way it's both like a stopper and a cam. And I close it pretty tight. So that's the issue. That's why when you're just starting trad climbing, using some of the bigger gear is better because it's just less likely you'll get it stuck. And then as you get better at it, you can move into those smaller things. Where did I go? Much good. Okay, Mason. Learning trad climbing. Are there any must-have books? Okay, let me think. Whoa, I have like a ton of books. So actually, what's it called? There's a book called Rock Climbing Anchors by John Long and someone else. That's a pretty nice book to have. Any book by Bob Gaines, if he's either the sole author or the, authored with. But Bob Gaines has some good books out there. One of them is called Advanced Rockcraft, and the other is called, I think, just Rock Climbing. They're both made by Falcon Guides. And one of them is actually the textbook that you use in the SPI world. But those books have a lot of pictures of ideal and non-ideal cam placements. So those are really good. Man, I'd have to go upstairs and look at my bookshelf to think of any recommendations. Caleb, if you're still watching this, you should throw in the chat some other books that you like to recommend to folks. And then see anything else that I'm not thinking of right now. I bet you he'll have some good suggestions. But yeah, those two books right there, anything Bob Gaines, Advanced Rockcraft and Normal Rock Climbing are good places to start off. The Trad Climber's Bible is not the book you want to learn placements from because it doesn't even talk about placements. So don't let that throw you off. It is a fun book to read though. So check it out. Can you share a story of a close call with a client? Oh, I got one right now. So this was actually back in Washington, and it was this year. If anyone's familiar with Forbidden Peak, it's definitely a route that I talk about it all the time, and I climb it all the time. But let's see now. I was descending the mountain. My buddy Dustin was up higher than me with his clients. So me and my clients were going down. Dustin and his clients were going down. And I guess it was just a crowded day. There was this 2 Euro climbers that they soloed up the mountain, and I passed them on the way down. So what they did is they tagged the mountain and then they down climbed the route and got to where we were in the cat scratch. And both me and Dustin were rappelling down the cat scratch at the time. And so there's these Euro guys. For those of you who aren't familiar with the cat scratch, there's the one that you go down, and then there's 1 or 2 more goalies off to skiers right, climbers left. And sometimes people go down those goalies, but they're not really climbed in. They're not really descended down. You just shouldn't be in there. And I was actually in the middle of lowering my clients. So I got to this at the end of the cat scratch gullies. There's one more anchor that you can use to get down onto the snow patch, and I was lowering my clients down 60, like a long ways, to get them to a safe spot, what I thought was a safe spot. Um, and then I was going to rappel down and do a little bit of down climbing. But what happened is one client was down on the ledge, and I was lowering the other client, and out of nowhere, these big ass rocks come out and just fly down. They're like this big, and the guy, my client, was actually kind of right in the line of fire. It just so happened that the rock was going towards him, and I'm like, move or something, do something. And luckily, the rock didn't hit him or the client I had below them, and a few more rocks came down. And I'm like wondering, like, and then it occurred to me, like, oh, someone's going down the wrong gully. And so I'm like, kind of like, I'm just nervous now because these idiots are up there, going down the wrong gully and they're knocking rocks down on all of us. So I'm like shouting to my clients, like, go, I was motioning, like, go to the left. And then in typical fashion, they started walking the wrong way. I'm like, they're walking towards where the rocks are falling. I'm like, no, other way. And so, yeah, they eventually like shoot over to like the sheltered area, which I felt pretty good about them being sheltered at. And I rappelled down. I did my 30-meter rappel, coiled up the rope, and wandered down to them. And then we just sort of got out of there. And, we had to do like a little bit more trickery, but eventually I got them out of there and we ran way to the left. And then that's when I was relaxed. But I was in like fight or flight for a while. I was thinking we were going to get beaten by these big rocks. And later on, Dustin told me like how it was all going down because he was up there watching it. And he was like, it was the 2 Euro dudes, or well, it was a guy and a girl. So the 2 Euros, and the guy was sliding down the gully just to the right of the one you go down. And Dustin was like, I don't even know how he stopped. So this guy was basically out of control going down this gully. And he was knocking off rocks left and right, which were going down on us. And Dustin was like, hey, can you just like not do that? There are people down there. And then the lady in her Euro voice, she's like, oh, there's no one down there. Like, no, there is people down there. So, yeah, that was the most recent time where, going back to what I said before, more people on a route sometimes is more dangerous than less people on a route. So, yeah, that got me mad. So there you go. I do have more stories that I could tell in the future, but I don't want this to go on all night. I guess if you really want them, I can make a video about it. Have you tried the BD Ultralight ice screws? Thinking about getting some, wondering how people like them. Yeah, I do. Oh, well, they're back there. Yeah, I've been using the BD Ultralights for a little bit now. Just like any ultralight aluminum screws, they just wear out faster than the steel screws. So if I'm doing like normal ice climbing or ice guiding, I actually have it right here. I have my bag of just your standard steel screws. So these guys, they just take the threads are more robust. The teeth take a better beating. And so these are good for like day-to-day ice work. And then if I'm up in the alpine, and you don't really use the screws too much in the alpine, so I was kind of like just focused on saving weight. That's when I break out ultralight screws. So I've had a number of BD screws, and I own a couple of the Petzl ultralights. No, I think they both work pretty well. I think I like the Petzls just a little bit more, but not by much. I think if either company gave me some screws, then I would use them for sure and be totally happy with it. Blue Ice also apparently has been making some good ice screws, but watch out for the ones that are full aluminum because those teeth just aren't going to bite in that well at all. I'm skeptical about that, but as long as they have a steel tip and an aluminum shaft, you're good to go. And I think that they're pretty nice. Aluminum screws do tend to stick in wet snow a little bit more than steel screws, though. So I use my aluminums up in the alpine on like more alpine ice, and they work just fine for the alpine stuff. But in water ice, it is a bit nicer to have steel screws. There are a few more opinions on that. I guess if Caleb's still watching, then you should weigh in on your opinions, Caleb. I'd like to hear that. Talk about a trick to clean a very overcam cam. There are a few things you can do with that. One is if you have a overcam cam stuck in a crack, you just take the same cam, maybe a bit bigger, put it in above it, and then put some weight on that cam, like bounce on it. And then, like I said before, these lobes will make or they can make the crack expand a bit more. So it could be a bit easier to take that cam out. So that's like a pretty nice trick. Another thing I've been known to do a lot is I take a nut tool. I have a nut tool just laying around. Here we go. So I take a nut tool, and if the cam's stuck in the crack like this, for example, I put the nut tool right here on the axle, and I take a rock. And if it's all lined up like this, I take a rock and I hit it. And these cams have very little stability laterally. So I can actually knock this cam into a wider section of the crack and pull it out like that. And I've had great success cleaning stuck cams by knocking them laterally. A lot of times, if you can make the lobes move a little bit, then you can get that cam out. If you pull the trigger and the lobes don't move at all, you got to put a lot more work into it. You could also piss on it. I've done that before. Let's see, how will you be gutting down in the Eastern Sierras or just Tahoe? I'm going to be all over California, wherever we have permits for. So I'm going to be all over the Sierra and all over Tahoe, everywhere. Blue Ice aluminum screws still have steel teeth. Yeah, so they make them with steel teeth, but then they also make ice screws that are full aluminum, if I remember that right. It's kind of weird. And I don't exactly know why they make them like that. Maybe just something, just something you carry with you while you're mountaineering, because you're not really going to use that screw unless someone falls in a crevasse, I guess. Blue Ice screws are a real light too. Yeah, they do have I think Blue Ice has the new widest diameter of ice screws on the market, but you'd have to fact check me on that. Never liked the express screws, too heavy. Been liking the camp rockets and Blue Ice. Yeah, I understand. The steel screws are definitely more heavy. They're definitely there for the in durability factor. I don't really wash my ropes, Mason. I think they kind of wear out a little bit too fast for me to wash them. All my ropes have dry treatment that helps keep them cleaner. So I just kind of just roll with that, actually. Andy, interested in skiing Shasta through a guide, but a bit hesitant as they say you need to be able to ski double blacks comfortably. Is it that hard? My friend said not bad. Yeah, in the long run, if you compare, and this depends on your ski resort, so they probably just like throw that out there. They want you to be an advanced skier. And so, double black, depending on your home resort, may be a little much. If your home resort is Crystal Mountain and you're thinking about Exterminator, Mount Shasta is not Exterminator. But I'd say just like any volcano, you could, if you've skinned up to Camp Muir and ski down that. I don't know if you live in Washington. I guess I just assumed, but that's a pretty good thing. If you can ski a black in just about any resort, you can probably go down Shasta pretty easily. One thing that would help you prepare for that is get your hands on the touring setup that you want to use on Shasta and take that into the resort. And you will notice it's harder to ski on that setup. And so if you prepare yourself with that setup, it'll be a lot easier to move from being in the resort to skiing down Shasta. But yeah, I mean, a full-on double black skier with style for Shasta is a little bit overkill, but they don't want people who only ski green runs up there. That's kind of, they're playing it to their favor. Video by Hard is Easy seems to imply that washing ropes might make them last longer. Yeah, there have been some actual studies done by real companies that talk about that sort of thing. Yes, it can last longer. Other times it may not. For me as a guide, with what I put my ropes through, they're just not going to last long enough for me to care about washing them. If they got really dirty and muddy, then I may consider that. But, anytime you're grinding those fine particles into the sheath of your rope, you're causing wear. So that's kind of what that's going for. I wouldn't really take Hard is Easy. Like, a guy makes great videos and I think they're nice, but I I wouldn't take his setup as the gospel because sometimes there's a little bit of holes in his testing. Let's see now. What other climbing YouTubers do I watch? So I can throw out a list. Glenn Young makes some really great videos. I've helped him. I mean, we've filmed each other's videos before, so that's great. His channel is called Skills for Climbing. Definitely check him out. See other advice type channels, huh? Because I watch channels for entertainment reasons. Like I think How Not To is really great entertainment for climbing stuff. I don't think it's really worth it as a reference channel, but I think it is kind of neat to see them break test and see limits of equipment. Um, let's see now. Is there anyone else out there? There must be. Like it's tough because there's not too many YouTubers that are full on guides, that work every day in the outdoors and have all their training. There are a few videos here and there made by people, but there's not a lot of regular posters. So I would definitely check out Skills for Climbing if you wanted to see that. Thanks, Bay Area and ski mostly Tahoe. Nice, Andy. Oh, where am I at my AMGA track? So I am going for my full pin. I have my rock guide cert and my alpine guide cert. I just passed the exam like a month or two ago, and I am taking my ski guide course this winter. So if everything goes well, I could be within 2 or 3 years. I could have my full pin, which is sort of what I'm going for. But all I have to do is the ski guide course, the advanced course, and the ski exam. That's all I have left. All right, Wide Boys. Yeah, they kind of make some fun stuff. Name, last name. Hi, name, last name. Also love Glenn. Yeah, I took my pro-lim with him, and he's very kind and patient. Yeah, for sure. Glenn is a great instructor. I definitely consider him a mentor of mine. I don't see him as much nowadays, but yeah, he's always a guy I can bounce off ideas with, and we can talk about, this system versus that system. Very knowledgeable guy. He's been doing this forever. All right. Well, I've been talking solidly for an hour and 42 minutes now. I think I'm going to call it good on this one. But if everyone enjoyed this whole like Ask Me Anything live stream type thing, I can definitely make more of this in the future, and I can maybe focus in on more specific things like a fixed point belay is always an easy one. One thing I've always wanted to do is bad belay habits. So I see tons of those out there, and maybe instead of making a video, I could do a live stream about that. But if anyone here liked it and has a suggestion or something in the future, then I would totally, love to hear it. I also can do live stream on Ask Me Anything Ski Edition, since this was more of a climbing edition. But I hope you guys all got something for it, and thanks for supporting my channel. It's nice to actually be able to interact with people, in real time. So, any last things, or I guess I'll just, thank you. Yeah, I think that's going to be it for the night. My voice hurts, and I'm going to go eat some dinner. So thanks, guys. I'll see you on the next stream.